They're not talking about the best of them. They're just talking about the rest of them. Not the worst parts, but the best parts. This is the best of the
Hello and welcome to Best of the Rest. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my jolly co-host, Andrew Williams. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm fine.
Good. Glad to hear it. We're here. End of the year, man.
You asked me about my Christmas decoration?
That's exactly. I've got this pile of fan mail here in our studio. The people want to know: have you decorated for the holidays?
Yes.
Have you purchased all your gifts?
For Christmas, yes.
Have you tried eggnog?
No.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, as someone famous once said. This episode's probably dropping
I'd do anything
sometime.
for love, but I wouldn't do that. And in this case, that is drink eggnog.
It's eggnog. This episode's probably dropping after Christmas. Who knows how these things work? But Andrew, I know you're going to be in my neck of the woods at some point. If we cross paths, if you make it into my home, I will probably still have eggnog in the fridge, and we'll make this happen. Keep your eyes on Discord for the result. Do you have the gene where you love the stuff, or you think it tastes like bubblegum? Who knows? I can go either way.
Is it like a really dumb cilantro where instead of tasting like soap, it tastes like bubblegum?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. It's weird.
What?
I love it.
What an insane thing.
Andrew,
Humans, man.
we've got 1 week left of this thing. Not just this month, but the year. Best of the Rest. I'm wearing my Best of the Rest shirt as we record this momentous occasion. And I got the gift. I got the gift right here. Let's dig in. Let's see what we're talking about today. I guess I should say this gift. It's from friend of the show, my wife. She's going to be on in studio with us. Am I going to have to say friend of the show, my wife, this entire episode? I don't know. I don't know how to address my wife. It's going to be interesting. But let's see what we're going to talk about. Let's open this up. Okay. Well, all right. First of all, the cover of this gift, wowza. It's a good one, but the movie is Death Becomes Her. Bonafide classic. Gosh, we're into the year on a high note. I'm excited to dig into this one.
This is going to be a blast. I can tell already.
This is a movie that I have not seen in a very long time, but I did see many, many times. As a youngin', I thought it was a blast. I think I watched it with my mom a few times. I think she's also a fan of this movie. It's so weird, it's so bonkers. Specific things stuck with me. I can't say I remember the whole thing beginning to end, but certain scenes, certain special effects, and certain other things are burned in my brain and stuck with me. Andrew, how about you? What's your history with this movie?
I am familiar, extremely deeply familiar with scenes from this movie.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah, okay.
So I've never really, I don't know that I've ever watched it start to finish. I've definitely remember, obviously, beyond the coy, slightly uncouth joke I just made. I know there's scenes from this movie that I remember. I know there's things that I remember watching, but I don't know if I've ever sat and watched it all the time, because watching it, there was definitely stuff I didn't remember. So I think I definitely was sitting down and watching it start to finish for the first time.
What a blast. Well, we are going to break it down on the positives, everything we liked. And of course, we'll be joined by a very special guest, friend of the show, my wife. Her name is Rachel. I don't know if I've ever said that on the podcast, but that's who's joining us later.
I would certainly hope that it's come up at least once.
Rachael Logan. I've probably referred to her as friend of the show, my wife. Just in general, in my life, more often than I've said Rachael Logan. It feels weird to use my wife's first name. At any rate, let's set the stage a little bit here. This movie, Death Becomes Her, it is released July 31st, 1992. Made on a budget of $55 million at the box office. It brings in $149 million. Pretty decent hit for the early 90s. Critically, a bit of a split reception, though. It holds a 57% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and there's a pretty steady consensus. So you look through those old reviews, people love the special effects, groundbreaking at the time, but critics struggle to find anything deeper than that to latch onto. That's kind of, I wouldn't say the legacy of this movie. It has only grown in popularity, but that was kind of the wrap on it at the time of its release.
Yeah. What I was kind of surprised by is the audience score is only 62%. I was a little surprised by that. I figured this was going to be another one of those ones where there was a decent gulf, because this movie does have a pretty big cult following. I thought in the years since release, you would have seen more people edge to kind of cranking this up into the 70s, the 80s, but seems generally the audiences are kind of on the same page. Now, to be fair, it's enough points to bump it into a fresh spot instead of a rotten spot, but it doesn't really matter, folks. Enjoy what you enjoy. But yeah, I was a little surprised by that. I figured that audience score is going to be a little bit higher, but yeah, surprised me. No further notes. I was going to say something, but I'm pretty sure I say it later, so I won't.
The movie is directed by Robert Zemeckis. Ever heard of this guy, Andrew? Robert Zemeckis.
Not familiar.
Someone that I don't think we've covered, but certainly there's movies in his filmography that qualify for our show. We will probably get around to it, but absolute.
We've mentioned What Lies Beneath a lot, just because it was insane to me that movie was the 10th highest grossing film of the year it came out.
Yes.
So there's probably a whole Zemeckis month we could do. But so I think he's come up a lot, but I don't think we've talked about him a lot. I don't think we've talked about one of his movies, at least.
Sure. Before Death Becomes Her, he's already directed Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Back to the Future, the trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy. So, certainly made a name for himself and is beginning to get his reputation for a visual effects guy, specifically groundbreaking, brand new technology visual effects guy, really pushing film forward. And something that, say what you will about the quality of his films, what you think about him, has continued to do his entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, obviously here, like, you see it in Back to the Future, you see it in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Something like Romancing the Stone, probably much more straightforward. It's just a romantic comedy. A good one. But with Back to the Future into Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you can kind of see, because Back to the Future, he's using a lot more practical stuff, but pulling off things that require a decent usage of effects. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, obviously kind of seamlessly blending the live action with the animated, and then obviously Back to the Future 2 and 3. Back to the Future 2 a little bit more getting into that, whereas 3 kind of a little bit more stripped down. But then Death Becomes Her kind of definitely that first step towards we're going to start implementing the heavy use of CG. Not heavy necessarily, but just using it a lot more. And then, like you said, right after this, his next film is Forrest Gump, which used a lot of the things of inserting Forrest Gump into like archive footage, creating sequences in which he met famous people, all of that kind of stuff pounding together. And then obviously you get into things in the 2000s with the motion capture with Polar Express, Beowulf, Christmas Carol, and then obviously even things like Welcome to Marwen and the Witches. So yeah, the critical reception with Zemeckis is definitely unstable, but the attention to detail and the way he throws himself into technologies, I don't think anybody would question that. And so this movie really is like a big step forward for a lot of the stuff that he's eventually going to become to kind of champion. And on that level alone, I think it's really interesting to watch it. Beyond that, it's awesome.
The movie is written by the team of Martin Donovan and David Koepp. Now, Martin Donovan, someone who we have not talked about before, more limited filmography and seems to have a more thriving career over in the UK. Certainly films that I'm not personally very familiar with, but worked with David Koepp on a couple of projects, including this one here. David Koepp, we have talked about before numerous times, but fascinating career. Just the range of stuff. You look at the projects this guy has worked on. Death That Comes Here, Jurassic Park, Carlito's Way, Mission Impossible, Snake Eyes, Stir of Echoes, which is a movie he also directs in a movie we covered previously. Writer on Panic Room, Spider-Man. I mean, almost none of these movies have much in common, or you wouldn't think it's the same creative force behind them. And for the most part, pretty high quality stuff. I'm especially drawn to the stuff that he decides to actually step in and direct, like Stir of Echoes, like I mentioned, Secret Window, which I think is a more than solid Stephen King adaptation, and of course, Andrew, Premium Rush, a movie we talked about a million times in this podcast, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the greatest actor of all time, I almost said Michael Shannon. Seek it out if you haven't seen it already, but again, I'll say it again. What a career.
Yeah, I mean, several times on the show, The Shadow, Jurassic Park 2, Stir of Echoes.
The Mummy. Tom Cruise is The Mummy. He's in that writing
Tom
room.
Cruise is The Mummy. Writing credits on the last two Indiana Jones films. I mean, yeah, like I said, the first Mission Impossible, Panic Room by David Fincher. So not just a huge variety of genres, a huge variety of like high quality direct. There was a period of time where like getting David Koepp to write your movie was a semi-prestigious thing of like if you get David Koepp, you were like, oh, he's a big deal. Between Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible, like when you're looking at Spielberg, you're looking at De Palma, you're looking at himself, my own directing. You've got any number of directors he's worked with. Kenneth Branagh, he's worked with. Like I said, it's a who's who of people, and he is still out there doing his thing. He's actually got writing credits on the new Jurassic World movie they're making, which carries the very original, very unheard of title of Jurassic World Rebirth. I hate it.
What's like, we've made the joke of Origins or, the beginning. Rebirth, that's like, it's that version of like a Lego sequel, Rebirth.
What I will say is I feel like I've heard of a lot more movies being called Rebirth than movies have actually been called Rebirth. I feel like there was a period of time where like that was the trend, was to call your movie like when it was announced like X Rebirth, and then by the time it came out they changed the title. I don't know that any movies actually have come out that are called something Rebirth. I just know that it's always kind of used in that vibe, which is why I kind of it's just lazy for me. But
is that official? Is that locked in, or is that a placeholder?
What?
Is that the official title? Like, is there posters?
I think that's what they're calling it right now. But Superman was called Superman Legacy for a long time until they just decided, oh, we should just call it Superman.
Andrew, is now a good time? Hang on. Stop! Everyone stop! Everyone stop! What they're doing.
Oh,
we haven't talked about the Superman trailer. We've kind of. I don't think we've texted about it. I think we've talked about it like in Discord, but not talking to each other.
Discord, there was some conversation. There was a few conversations in the Discord about it. Yeah.
Look, I'll go first here because I've said cautiously optimistic about this Superman movie. because I like James Gunn. I like a lot of his work. I love the Guardians movies. But there's a certain... He's got a style. He's got a thing, right? Like, there's some common threads in his work, specifically around, like, the tone and sense of humor, that I have a hard time seeing this man take the helm of Superman, specifically the way I want Superman handled, which isn't a hot take. I think it's how a lot of people feel at this point, is like, just give me classic Superman. We've seen a lot of evil Superman. We've seen, whatever you want to call Zack Snyder Superman, the optimistic,
morally
bright,
conflicted Superman.
Yes, bright, optimistic, classic Superman. Superman Returns kind of made an attempt at it, but most people feel like it missed the mark. But I just have a hard time seeing James Gunn being that guy, getting out of his own way to let it be what it needs to be. Even though he loves comics, he loves the character. Like, I know that's there. That's how I've described it. It's cautiously optimistic. I saw the poster. Looks cool. Suit looks cool. This actor they have, looks like he looks the part. This trailer drops. I watch it right away because I'm just so curious. It looks so good. I have... My needle has moved from cautiously optimistic to hyped. I don't even watch a lot of trailers. We talked about it before, but like I had to see this. I was about as blown away as you can be by a trailer. It looks great. The moment that I keep replaying is like when he's saving that little girl from all the debris, like real classic Superman stuff, saving the little person. I love, and forgive me, I can't think of the actor's name right now, but it's just a teaser trailer. There's not too much. His Clark Kent seems amazing. Seems spot on. I think he's handling the transformation so well from Clark Kent to Superman. If there's anything that kind of gave me pause, there's this moment in the trailer where like people on the street are throwing trash at Superman, and I feel like that dynamic just reminds me too much of stuff we've seen recently. But I don't know how it's going to play in context.
I have thought about that.
Overall, it looks like a bright, optimistic, visually bright, colorful. We see a ton of other heroes and characters. A hot girl flies by, and I haven't like read all the Easter eggs, but there's a lot going for it. And I've officially moved into the hype camp. I can't wait to see this thing.
I sent you a meme on the phone that kind of sums up how a meme on the phone. I sound like an old person.
You mean you sent it just now, right?
Yeah. I think that kind of sums up in general how I feel.
Yeah.
But it's there's an interesting
hang on. I gotta explain what the meme is. It's a Simpsons meme. It's Principal Skinner and Jay. He's looking at, I can't remember the original context of this, trading cards or something, but James Gunn has them, and Skinner is saying, "Why, it's Crypto the Superdog and Metamorpho and Hot Girl, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific. They're all here." And he's excited to see all the characters. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention Crypto, but I've spoke enough. Continue, Andrew.
Anyway, there's an interesting thing that I think kind of points to kind of your point of like, we're just a little bit of the Taika Waititi, like, can the dialogue stay out of its own way to carry the story that it needs? This trailer has one piece of dialogue. Crypto, take me home. Nothing else is said the entire rest.
I didn't even realize that until you pointed that out.
And I think, and I saw somebody be like, for a movie made by a guy who thrives on his dialogue, that's an interesting choice. But I think it's a deliberate choice to tell you this maybe isn't going to be exactly the same as Guardian. I have no doubt that he can handle the emotional weight. I do believe there's going to be a Jonathan Kent scene in this movie that's going to destroy me. And not in like rage at wanting to rip the screen apart, but just because something bad's going to happen to him. I think the usage of the John Williams motif is good. I don't think you want to just use it like it was, but I think it is one of those things that is so synonymous with the character. I think kind of trying to run away from it just doesn't really work. I liked, and like they had like a motion version of the poster where it was this woman almost like humming the theme, and it was just like very like almost haunting and beautiful. And then this version we're doing a much more like a guitar driven version that kind of segues into like a much more orchestral version. Still, like, you hear the motif, but it doesn't sound the same. So it tells you, hey, this is Superman, but it's not just that, which is the problem Superman Returns has, is that it's just literally the opening credits of Superman Returns are just the opening credits to Superman 78. They're exactly the same. The same font, it's the same logos, it's the same swooping everything, it's the same music, it's the same everything. With this, I think it does exactly what it needs to do. I mean, it's out there that it's like the most watched Warner Brothers DC trailer ever, like 250 million views or something like that in the first few days.
Which is amazing that so many people are responding to it, because nerdy ass comic book people, yeah, this is ticking those boxes, but like there's clearly like a thirst, a desire out there in the public for something bright and not doom and gloom, and
something maybe a little bit different.
I'm letting the hype pull. Like, how perfect would it be for a Superman movie to like give us just a moment of optimism and hopefulness in the theaters, and with whatever you got going on, like that would be so perfect.
I watched the trailer. I've watched it all the time. I've watched it like several times every day because I just like listening to the music. I think that's definitely going to be a soundtrack that I buy. I can already tell you that, but it actually makes me emotional, like watching it, because Superman is such a monumentally important character to me that spending a decade, not to the fault of Henry Cavill, I know he really wanted to do something else, and then in that same decade, not just seeing Superman kind of sit in this more morally gray space, but to then see it augmented by things like Omni-Man and Homelander and stuff like that, where there's this evil Superman trope, and then
Brightburn,
you've got even Eternals basically having Icarus be evil Superman, and having people kind of flock to those. Not that I think flocking to them is a problem, but just it really did kind of feel like for a while there that the idea of a classic Superman just wasn't going to happen, because it didn't feel like that was in the public zeitgeist in the way that doing it in a kind of more cynical way was. And so to watch the trailer and see it kind of present Superman as Superman, and then just the stuff with Krypto where like he's hurt and he calls his dog and his dog comes and helps him, and seeing stuff like that, it's the kind of stuff that, one, tells me that this is not going to be morally gray. Two, it's not afraid to be what it is, which, as much as I know there's fans of Zack Snyder's stuff, so many of his DC movies just felt like they were afraid to be comic book movies. Like, they needed to be cool, they needed to be edgy, they needed to be different. They couldn't just have, there's not going to be a super dog in Man of Steel, and if he was, they'd probably kill him in the first 10 minutes. This is the guy that killed Jimmy Olsen for fun.
Yeah.
And it's so to see all of that, to see Superman saving people, to see the Krypto stuff, to see the characters, to see Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner, and all of that, I'm like, this knows what it is, and I think what we're going to kind of get is a little bit of a reverse situation of Kingdom Come, where like Kingdom Come has Superman stepping back because the world embraces the more cynical superheroes, but it gets so bad that Superman is forced to come back. And I think what we're going to see is Superman emerging in a world that already exists with superheroes, and he inspires a new example, and the hope and optimism that he brings ends up rippling through that universe and kind of redefines maybe a little bit how these people were doing things. That sequence, there's 3 bits. There's one where Superman gets burned by like that giant monster he's fighting, and then he's walking through the crowd of people and his suit's kind of charred, and then he's sitting in the lobby, and then when Green Lantern comes and talks to him, he goes into that lobby and blurs out the windows and stuff. I think those are all in a sequence. I think something happens when he fights that monster, makes the people maybe not really believe in him quite as much as they should, so they throw something at him, and then that moment afterwards, Green Lantern kind of blocks out the windows, and they're going to talk to him about something. But I feel like that's not going to be the whole movie. I think that's just going to be limited to that kind of moment. I think that's the idea there, that just in this instance, something went wrong, and maybe he's still trying to figure it out. But the way the music worked, the way the character works, the way the sequences played together, I'm like, I want to be able to watch something with Superman and have everybody else, even if just for those 2 hours, feel about Superman the way that I do. And there's not a whole lot of stuff you can point to do that. Even Superman stories that I love, like All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is a tough thing to hand like a casual fan.
Yeah,
like, hey, here's All-Star Superman. And it's like, there's a lot of really wild stuff. And then you could give them something like, say, Superman for All Seasons or something that's a little bit more palatable. But if for those 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it is, everybody on the planet can see in Superman what I do, then that's the real success as far as I'm concerned.
Undoubtedly going to be a bonus episode of this podcast. I can't wait. I am hyped. I am officially on
God,
the
if
hype
it sucks,
train.
I'm going to be devastated.
I mean,
I will never recover if it
we will
20-minute segue about Superman on our Death Becomes Her episode.
It was very important to get this on the record, especially from you, Andrew, and I'm glad that we did. But you're right, we got to move on. We got to bring in our very special guest, a dear friend of the show and my wife, Rachael Logan, to talk about this movie, Death Becomes Her. Andrew, you ready?
Yeah.
We are podcasting with positivity.
When Helen's fiancé Ernest leaves her for Madeline, an actress and childhood friend, Helen vows to get revenge. 14 years later, an aging Madeline drinks a mysterious potion that promises eternal youth and beauty. After Helen returns to enact her plan, she persuades Ernest to murder Madeline, and they all discover that the potion keeps her alive, even in death. Madeline then kills Helen, only to learn that she too has taken the potion. After the two zombies and former friends patch things up, they turn to Ernest to keep their decomposing bodies looking normal, but he is tired of being pushed around. Hell of a thing we got here. And reading that synopsis, it's wild that this isn't, like, in my opinion, at all a Halloween or horror movie. Like, there's some pretty, like, grotesque stuff we're doing here, but at no point do I feel like this is something I can turn on, like, every October. It's just kind of a good time.
Really? You don't think you could watch this in October?
I mean, you could. There's no laws against it, but I don't particularly feel like it's Halloween.
I think it's definitely
specific.
got that, like, that gothic vibe to it. So, yeah.
I mean, you definitely just called it a zombie movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, on paper, I feel like it sounds more horror, Halloween slanted than it actually plays out. I think it's just enough over the top and kind of Looney Tunes-y to keep it away from that. But you know what? It sounds like maybe y'all disagree, and we can come back around to that. First things first, we got to acknowledge this person that's in the studio, this person that just spoke. This person happens to be a dear friend of the show, my wife. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Best of the Rest.
Hello. I'm excited to be a guest of the rest. And actually, I've been here the whole time. I'm always here whenever you're doing a podcast. So fun fact, always in the studio.
Every episode, you just never hear her. You've been on the show before. You came on to talk about Josie and the Pussycats. Now, for whatever reason, I myself was not on that episode. You provided a pre-recorded epilogue of sorts for our bonus episode on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But this is the first time that me friend of the show, my wife, are on the show at the same time. It only took
4
3
years.
years.
Yeah.
4 years? I don't know. How long have we been doing this? 7 years? We started before the pandemic,
Chris,
so 12 years ago.
1978.
Once you do something for 20 years, it really just becomes routine at that point.
It's like we recorded Green Lantern, and then 7 years later, we recorded Wolverine, and then another 7 years later, we're recording Death Becomes Her.
And then in 37 years, we will do another.
We will die.
We will die.
I will remember where we parked the car.
Friend of the show, my wife. I don't know if I'm going to call you that the whole episode.
Please don't.
It's weird saying that to your face.
Yeah, you can call me
but
CLW.
It's also weird if I call you Rachel.
You never call me that anyways.
I know, it's weird. I don't know what to call you. We probably should have figured this out before. But more important questions here. Andrew and I already talked about it, but what is your history with this movie? One, that's the big question. And also, why did you decide to pick this movie specifically to come onto our podcast? Every guest this month could bring any movie they wanted. You specifically chose this one. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so this movie came out in 92, so I was probably 5. Chances are very good that I saw it in theaters with my parents. In The Sound of Music where they've got that party trick where all the kids sing that goodnight song? My party trick as a kid was singing Me from the opening credits of this song. And you heard me sing it to our son earlier who wanted to hear it. Between that and quoting my ass, I can see my ass as a very small child was something that I did to entertain my parents' friends. It's something we watched just all the time. I think we broke the VHS. We had to get a new one. It just wore out over time. And then when I met you, I had the giant poster in my room, and not of the 3 main characters. It was of Liesel and the potion. So big poster of the
very nice.
So did I.
Yes. Yes, right next to Ava Green from Sin City 2.
Man, we have the same posters for, I'm guessing, the same reasons.
Same taste in art.
It's very thematic.
Definitely the same reasons.
Surely I talked about you plenty whenever we did our Showgirls episode, which is another time we actually tried to get you on the podcast. It just didn't work out. You had a scheduling conflict that day. I don't know what you were doing. Another podcast probably. But that's another movie that goes back to your childhood. Your love for that movie goes back farther than it probably should.
Yeah.
And you could quote and sing things from that movie before you probably should. Now that you hear, I probably can't confirm. I probably said that on the episode, but with you being here, I just want people to know that legitimately you know all the words. You said well, first off, real quick, when do you think this is the last time you watched this movie, Death Becomes Her, beginning to end?
I mean, if it's before I met you, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
It's been a minute.
A very long time ago. You were wondering if you could still quote the movie. And you're not referring to, like, the big lines, the one you said earlier. You know every word of this movie. From the opening credits, you are saying words. At one point, I was like, look, I acknowledge you. You know the words. You don't need to prove anything. But there's, like, when Helen is in the
Rachel's
psychiatric
just Roman
ward,
Reigns before this movie starts. She's, like, putting the finger up, just, like, acknowledge me.
Yeah, it's true. You could put it on mute, and I could do the whole thing. Similar to the first, 12 seasons of The Simpsons, like, I wonder how much I would, how smart I would be if I didn't have all this in my head. You never know.
When Helen is in the psychiatric ward, you're quoting the nurse. That character probably doesn't even have a name, but you know everything. And
you're not
wild.
Even 1 pound lighter. Savage.
How many times you saw this to have that eternally etched into your brain? And I disagree. I think this is the most important thing that could be in that part of your brain, because it makes you who you are, you know?
I don't know if that's a good thing or
Aw.
not, but I'll take it.
I like
Question
you.
mark?
Thank God. That'd be an awkward
All right,
podcast
well,
here.
Let's oh, well, I guess, well, why did you pick this movie? Obviously, you love it. Your love for this goes down to your bones. But what made you think this is the one I'm going to make the guys watch?
Well, so you had already done Showgirls Without Me, which is rude, and we have talked about. But really, I was just looking through Rotten Tomatoes one day, and I was like, just kind of seeing what would pass for the movie. And I scrolled across this, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because it never dawned on me that this might be a low-rated movie because it's amazing. Genuinely, I was flabbergasted. And so I think I think you were recording a podcast at the time, and I took a screenshot. And I was like, this find a reason for me to do this, and then here we are.
Here we are, finishing out the year with this one, and I think it's a great pick. I can't wait to talk about it. I love this movie. If I haven't made it clear already earlier in the episode, but I really enjoyed it. But I hadn't seen it in 20 years at least, but definitely one I saw a number of times as a youngin' and liked for various reasons, as we'll get into. But before we get into the scenes, you know what we gotta do. We gotta talk about this cast, starting with a high point, the best casting, best performance of the film, because every episode we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the call of duty that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance, and we recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. So, Andrew, kick us off. Who is getting your Mark Strong Award for Death Becomes Her?
This is actually a very tough decision for me because I think you could literally give it to anyone, and I don't think there would be any question of anything. Like, I remember reading that like Kevin Kline was in the running for Ernest's character, and I'm like, man, that just every single performance to me feels like it is embodied by this actor. And I think changing any one of them, just I can't see the movie the same way in my head. So it's an odd situation for me where I feel like everybody is elevating what they're doing. And so now I have to pick who is elevating it the most. And I got to the end, and there was a specific line delivery that was just etched in my brain the minute the character said it, and I never forgot it. So I got to go with my gut, and I got to go with my first instinct, and I'm actually going to be going with Bruce Willis as Ernest Menville as my Mark Strong for Death Becomes Her.
Wow.
Because there is a
fantastic pick,
crazed manic energy that he has once this movie kicks into gear that is just delightful to watch. Like it's this Looney Tunes-esque madness that he just descends into throughout the course of this movie, and it is just wonderful to watch. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording, just how Bruce Willis became kind of this archetype. Like, everybody loves Die Hard. Everybody's seen Die Hard. That kind of, the kind of witty everyman, that kind of vision of Bruce Willis, and then obviously kind of like late stage Bruce Willis, where he kind of was just doing the same kind of thing. And then obviously with the issues that ultimately were revealed, the health problems that he has, kind of reframing the last like 20 years of his career and his last 20 years of behavior. It's turned him a little bit more into a tragic story, but to see him here, like firing on all cylinders, you really are reminded that he didn't get famous for no reason. Like he was genuinely charming and witty and charismatic, and brought all of that energy to this performance specifically. And it's this weird glue that sits in between Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep, and I don't know that it quite works without him. He's this interesting bridge between the characters, and I don't think anyone. I have a feeling we will definitely be talking about Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep in short order. But Bruce Willis just is flying off the screen at me in this, and I just think he's so funny and so good in this.
I think this is a great pick because I do love this performance, and this movie revolves around three people specifically, and the experience of watching this movie is watching these three people fall apart in very different ways. But Bruce Willis's character falls to pieces in this movie, and that descent into madness is so fun to watch. I feel like you see him lose his hair throughout the movie, and you do in a very real sense with the jump forward in time. But even beyond that, even once we're in quote unquote present day, I feel like with every hand to the head of stress, like more hair is falling out. It's very
You're
like
just watching
Homer
it
Simpson.
become bald, Bruce Willis.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, this performance is so fun. It's something that, like you said, after a certain point, Bruce Willis would never return to this type of performance. And I love pretty much everything he did. You know, he gets that persona and he's great at it, and I get it. But man, this is so much fun to go back to. Gotta say, Bruce Willis, alum of the show, probably a Mark Strong Award winner.
No way to know.
For a Good Day to Die Hard. We can't check. There's no way to know. I don't know. I guess he picked him one up there. We also talked about him on Glass. Pretty sure he did not get one there, and that's a very late stage, and it gets into the more tragic part of what happened with his career. But we've talked about him before. We've sung his praises before. What a legend!
Sin City 2 as well?
Which one?
Sin City 2 as well. Another alum.
No, he's not in that one.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
He is.
The question
Bruce
is not
Willis
whether
is?
he's in Sin City 2, Chris. The question is, did we talk about Sin City 2? I know he's in it. He's not in it a
Sin
lot,
City
but
2?
he's in
Yes.
it.
Cardigan's in it.
Because Jessica Alba sees him as like a hallucination or whatever.
Huh. Oh, yeah. Yeah, probably didn't get the Mark Strong Award for that.
I would
No.
assume
Probably
not.
not.
No,
But we've had a chance. We've had a chance to
yeah,
talk about it before. I love the performance. It's a great pick.
You know, for me, because I watched this movie so much as a kid, and he's the only one who doesn't become young. He looks old the whole time. I had no idea it was Bruce Willis until I was like, late teens, maybe. And like, I loved Bruce Willis. The Fifth Element is one of my favorite movies. I had no idea it was him. I just never connected this old man to Bruce Willis.
It is wild that like it's like the Sean Connery effect a little bit. Like there's this point where Sean Connery just switched from being like young James Bond Sean Connery to old man Sean Connery, and people don't always reconcile them. My dad loves telling the story that my sister hates about watching an old James Bond movie and her not realizing that was Sean Connery because her only frame of reference was like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where like if you watch that and then you go back and watch like Dr. No, you're just like, who is this man? These are not the same person. This isn't the thing. But yeah, Bruce Willis has that moment way too, where he like it's between this and Pulp Fiction. Like he switches, and it's just he looks like Pulp Fiction the rest of his career, basically.
I have a hard time connecting modern Mark Hamill with Star Wars, A New Hope Mark Hamill, but Harrison Ford is always Harrison Ford. So it's weird how some people kind of have this change and some don't. Just like there's a famous GIF that everyone knows of that bearded man in the woods that slowly nods yes as the camera zooms in. 99% of people don't know that's Robert Redford because
they have no
he
idea.
looks nothing like what he would
people think it's Zach Galifianakis. They think it's even though that's
they think it's like a Tim and Eric clip or something.
It's from Jeremiah Johnson, which I'm pretty sure came out in the 70s, 72. So it's probably before Zach Galifianakis was probably like 10.
I thought it was Mark Hamill, so there you go.
It brings it full circle. Friend of the show, dear friend of the show, my wife.
We get it. You like each other.
Well, he likes me at least.
Who's getting your Mark Strong Award?
So I agree with Andrew. It could go to anybody, including that necklace. Was definitely my runner-up for the Mark Strong Award winner. But it has to go to Meryl Streep.
Specifically, Isabella's neck that was the Mark Strong winner.
It's the necklace. Whoa.
Say that everything around the necklace is doing a lot of work too.
Okay, gross. Meryl Streep, let's bring it back around. She is doing her best impersonation of herself. She is overacting. Yes. She is Miss Piggy in real life. She is just going for it. I think it's her second comedic role, her first and only role, to quote her, that has heavy visual effects because she hated it. She just hated all the green screen and the blue hoods and all that. But she is just killing it from the moment you see her, in that little mirror and she's doing her song and dance. She's doing a song and dance the whole way through. She is just hamming it up. She is having a good time. You would never know that she's not a quote unquote comedic actress. I see people talk about her in Only Murders in the Building and like, oh, she's really funny. Like, yeah, she's really fun. Like to me, of course, like she's really funny. She's always been really funny. But not a lot of people, I guess, know that about her. So I got to give it to her. She's probably shaped a lot of who I am as a person in my head. Who I want to be is Madeline Ashton a little bit. So yeah, she's having a great time, and you can tell.
What's the other comedy she did? Is it Manhattan?
I gave it a quick Google. It's one like right before this.
Because she's in a Woody Allen. She's in a Woody Allen in the late 70s, but she's not. I don't think she's a big part of it. I don't know. I don't watch Woody Allen movies.
And she goes on to do more like light-hearted is the right word. Something like Devil Wears Prada isn't a comedy, but it's certainly she shows comedic chops throughout her career. But yeah, this certainly comes at a time where she is known as a super serious actress on her way to being known as the greatest actor of our time. We talk about movies like A Small Part in The Deer Hunter, but also Kramer versus Kramer, where I think she gets an Oscar nom, maybe a win. Sophie's Choice.
She wins for Kramer versus Kramer and Sophie's Choice. She wins for both those. She's nominated 9 times for the Academy Award going into this movie. 9 times.
Out of Africa, Evil Angels, which is where Dingo Took My Baby came from. So like she's already known for these super serious dramatic roles. And then this is her being like, look, I can literally do it all. I can be funny too. And it's funny. I never really thought about it that way. Rachel, it sounds weird. That you said she's sort of playing herself, like a parody or persona of herself. And of herself and like all of Hollywood. I mean, this whole thing is all about how Hollywood is vain and chasing their youth and full of themselves. But that is funny, and she absolutely kills it. I'm gonna give my Mark Strong award to someone else, which means you probably know who it's going for. I promise I had this like set in my mind. I had my choice made before you guys revealed who was getting your Mark Strong award. But I'm giving my Mark Strong award to Goldie Hawn as Helen, and I think it's awesome that we are hitting up the entire
Triple Crown there,
main cast, because they all deserve it. I mean, they are all. Andrew said it earlier, like I can't imagine anyone else in any of these roles because they all crush it to the full extent, even to the point where I can't see Goldie Hawn in Meryl's part or Meryl and Goldie. Like even that casting is so specific and perfect.
Well, and Meryl thought she was getting that role when she got hired. She thought she was going to play Helen, not the song and dance Madeline.
That's
wild.
That's really interesting. I can't say I can't see. I mean, it's Meryl Streep; she can do anything. But I think this casting makes so much.
What poor communication on the studio's part? That's awful.
Yeah, it's the 90s.
I thought I was gonna have a hole in my stomach, not my neck broken.
Several times.
What ultimately tipped it for me, because I love all these performances, and I think I knew it was going to go to one of the leading women, but what tipped it for me is, Andrew, you and I have had a chance to talk about a few times where a movie will take a objectively beautiful actress, but have a before and after, she's all that style, where she's like frumpy for a while, and then something happens.
She takes off her glasses.
We've had multiple Catwomen, like Michelle Pfeiffer. You can't make Michelle Pfeiffer not look like Michelle Pfeiffer. Like when she's like a secretary, you're like, yeah, but that's
Sandra Bullock and Miss Congeniality. That's always a big one for me, where they're like, let's try.
I'm talking about movies that we've covered on this podcast, though, Andrew.
Well, I'm talking about movies we should have covered on this podcast, Chris.
Whoa.
Okay, coming next month. Just kidding. Halle Berry. I mean, it's Halle Berry, We did Catwoman, and you have her, like, in a brown dress, and all of a sudden she's supposed to not be Halle Berry. It just doesn't make sense. But at the risk of sounding backhanded to Goldie Hawn, I totally buy, like, the opening scene whenever she's, sitting next to Ernest, and he's getting wowed by Meryl Streep on stage, and she suddenly feels like insecure and overlooked, and it's happened so many times to her. Like, I can see her being maybe like a bookish type, not a star. Like, I buy her kind of being a wallflower and fading to the background, but then she really falls off a cliff. 7 years after that. But when she reemerges in the red dress, it's like, wowza, like she pulls off that transformation so well. Again, it's a trope I've seen a million times. This might be the best version of it, of playing whatever you want to call it, the homely, frumpy version to like the knockout after the transformation. She does it so well. Her eyes are so expressive, which I know is just kind of a hallmark of Goldie Hawn, but they really tap into it because, like, when, after both women are dead, they find different ways to kind of always remind you they're, as her eyes, so once she's dead, with that effect they're doing on her eyes, I think is so smart because that's arguably her greatest asset as an actor. And, highlights it so well with those eerie looking cloudy eyes they give her. But yeah, it's for that transformation specifically that was kind of the tipping point, but all three leads are worthy. It's just perfectly cast, as we said, but officially Goldie Hawn, Mark Strong Award winner.
I mean, they really do make her look so mousy in that first scene and so small. And then with the cats, she really just melts into that suit and those leggings.
Yes.
And then later you see her in different leggings, and it's a much different
It's the cats, man. Something about these women in these movies we've covered and women with cats. They keep trying to make these women seem unattractive.
I think that they're all produced by dogs. It's a crime against cats. And someone should really speak out against it.
When do you think the cat trope started? Because, I mean, this movie is 92. This is... I don't know if I was surprised to see it, but I think of that as a little bit more of a new reference. You're going to be like alone with your cats, Spinterest thing. But I guess it's been around. I guess it's been around for a minute.
Probably Grey Gardens. I don't know if you know what Grey Gardens is. I'm saying that.
I don't know. No.
It's a there was a 1975 documentary about two women that kind of lived in, I guess, like borderline squalor. It was the Beale sisters. It was a mother and daughter, not sisters. But they lived in this like run-down, decrepit mansion, and I think that's probably where it starts. They had a bunch of cats that just lived in the rundown house with them. So I would assume that was probably at least a big, at least in like modern pop culture, that's probably a big thing. Because Grey Gardens, despite your unfamiliarity with it, was a relatively successful documentary. It spawned a lot of like documentary now.
When did it come out?
1975.
Oh yeah. I didn't get to a lot of movies that year. That's probably that's
Chris.
I didn't get around to that one.
Chris.
Well, but so according to NPR, the trope of single woman and her association with cats really took off during the Victorian era. So you really weren't watching movies
Wow.
then. So the dogs have been
think
against
anybody was.
women for a long time.
I think our 3 Mark Strong Award winners really covers just about the entire cast we need to go into, like, in depth. But there's one more I'm going to throw out here.
You gotta.
Isabella Rossellini.
How dare you suggest we don't need to talk about Isabella Rossellini?
Listen, we do, and that's why we're doing it. Friend of the show, how do you pronounce this character's name?
Isabella Rossellini.
The character's name.
Character?
Oh. I was
Liesel,
like, what?
right?
Well, I mean, you both pronounce things so differently sometimes. As a
Well,
controversy.
I'm deferring to you because I'm gonna assume that you know the correct way to say it. Did you know everything?
Liesel, yeah.
I do know it.
Liesel. Okay. As Liesel. Isabella Rossellini. Legend in film, literally born into like film royalty.
Yeah.
Here essentially playing the ideal beauty standard for a person, I think is kind of how you describe this role, and well cast. I mean, well done.
10 out of 10.
Beyond,
no notes.
Beyond that, respectfully, of course. I mean, that's the movie. That's exactly what the movie's trying to portray. It's not just me creeping. But beyond that, the way she's playing up, I mean, she says she's 72, but
71 years old.
Excuse me. Gosh, you're going to fact check every quote I got here. It says she's in her 70s, but I feel like she's playing this as if she's been around since like the Egyptians. I mean, she's speaking like a god of the old days, the way she presents the potion and everything. And I absolutely love this performance. I love the wild stuff she wears. Not just because how revealing it is, but just how striking the costume designing is. And it's like something you would see, on a fashion runway, but it's just her wearing it in her mansion around all of her manservants. It's such a weird performance, a weird thing. But it's great. This movie, it's got this cult following, which is weird to say because it's actually pretty successful at the box office, but it has only grown in popularity. And I was reading a bit on Wikipedia. It's got like a strong presence like in the queer community, and there's not anything overtly queer in any of these characters, but I gotta imagine that's mostly coming from this movie just being a sexual awakening for so many people that saw it. Wherever you are in the spectrum, something here is going to move you, and I think that's how it's worked its way into that specific following that it has.
You've got David Bowie in The Labyrinth for some, and Isabella in Death Becomes Her for others, or everybody.
I think there's no way everybody doesn't have some reaction to that.
I mean, they're both for everybody. Let's be honest.
If we're being honest. I do actually really like Isabella Rossellini as an actress. She she was in several early David Lynch movies where she's really, really good. She dated David Lynch for a while, I think, as a result of that, but she's still out there. I actually just saw her in Conclave, which I think she just got nominated for a Golden Globe for. So she is...
Yeah, I've heard good things about that, for
sure. She is still out there doing stuff. Have we talked about her before I feel like I have talked about her before, but I don't think she was in anything we were talking about.
You talk about her all the time, Andrew. I don't know if it's happened on microphone, but I feel like every other text I get from you is like...
it's like I'm looking through the filmography and like I just don't see any other movies she's been in that we would have talked about. So
it might have been when you're talking about Sam Neill, because he was in Merlin and she was in Merlin because she dated him in Merlin. So maybe that's where, because I feel like you have talked about her on the podcast at some point, but I can't figure out where. But I mean, there's a segue for you.
We'll have to check. Unfortunately, actually, I take that back. There's no way to check. So there's no way to be aware of any of this. But anyway, she's got a very...
Sam Neill was also in Evil Angels with Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep was in The River Wild with Kevin Bacon.
Hey, it always works.
We did it.
Why'd you do that?
It's funny being able to see his face when he's annoyed by you and not just hear it back.
Not just hear the silence.
You can hear the annoyance on my voice.
I mean, it's exactly what I thought your face would look like. So
it is correct. I'm glad the silence apparently paints the picture really well somehow. It's impressive for an audio-based format. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I definitely talked about it for some reason, but I don't remember why. No, that's not true. I know exactly why. I just don't remember the context. But anyway, she has a very specific role to play here. I think she does an extremely good job at it. And like you said, I would not be shocked at all if this was definitely what's the tactful way of putting this?
Awakening?
A monumental performance for some people of a certain age. Nailed it.
I mean,
first try.
She's eaten it up. She's only on for like 12 minutes of the entire movie. It's not a long movie, but she's barely in it, but she still has a huge presence.
Oh, yes.
And when Meryl guesses her age is, I don't know, 38, she's actually 39 in this movie. And I hope to look like her when I'm 39.
Wow.
I hope to look like 10% of that when I'm 39. I got 2 years to figure that out, guys.
Right there with you.
I look 10 years older than Bruce Willis did when he was in this movie.
You simultaneously look older, but still not a man.
I know. It's like, it's just always losing, man. I can't do it.
Well, and it's crazy, too, because both leading ladies were in their 40s when they made this movie.
Right.
And they look amazing.
Right.
And they still look
wild
amazing.
that, like Meryl Streep's being portrayed as this woman at, like, the end of her career at the beginning of this movie, and I'm like, she looks flawless. Like, what's the problem here?
It's funny how much age is, because they're playing 50, and that's like old, like video for grandma roles, and it kind of was once upon a time, maybe even in the early 90s, but we don't think of it that way now. And I love how there's multiple shots of them de-aging, and they always have those brown spots on their hand, old people spots, and it's like they're 50. Like, let's calm down.
Easy now.
Easy.
I got spots
on
my hands, and I'm 37. Come on, guy.
I thought I had one, and it was just a bruise, and I was so thankful.
Get your liver checked. Let's talk about the scenes of this film, and specifically the best scene of the movie, or at the very least, our personal favorite. Andrew, kick us off here. When is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is the best scene in Death Becomes Her?
Great question, Chris. There's a moment that this movie kicks in, and it basically doesn't really let up the entire rest of the movie. And it would be easy to say that from the moment they go to the hospital to the end of the movie is just one chaotic sequence of events. But I'm gonna go specifically with that hospital scene, just because there is a line delivery in that Bruce Willis gives. That was the one I remember. I literally cackled out loud when he's literally like, "The morgue, she'll be furious," and then runs off.
He's such a whipping boy. Andrew is dead. He's such a whipping boy to these two women that his first thought is her feelings, her anger that she's gonna be put in a place, icky place she doesn't want to be. Not the fact that she's still alive and locked in.
Oh man, I literally I was afraid Liz was gonna hear me from the other room because of how hard I was laughing at that line. But so his breakneck running back and forth. This is kind of where you get to that manic energy. This is really because to this point, it's kind of slow building, and then we have the moment where he kind of pushes her down the steps, which is a pretty important moment, and that kind of has the first scene there. But he really kicks it into overdrive with this hospital scene where he's running to the lobby, and he sees all the other hurt people, and he's running back, and he's like, "Where are all the doctors?" And he realizes the doctor that saw her has died at this point, played by Sidney Pollack. Oddly, just a random cameo in this movie for no reason, where he just decided to show up. Academy Award-winning director. But the running back and forth where he's just trying to figure out, and then running back to the room, and it's we sent her to the morgue, and then his freak out and running to the morgue and doing all that. I was just that was the moment where I think I was this is the best movie ever. This is great. I was having such a blast watching that sequence, seeing Bruce Willis kind of really finally kick over the edge. Meryl Streep's kind of understated performance through the whole thing, where she's just not bothered by anything that's happening at this point. She's just no, it doesn't hurt. It's fine. Whatever. All of it works, and it was a blast. I will forever be waiting for a moment in life to be able to go, "The morgue, she'll be furious." I'm probably going to be waiting a very long time, but I'm gonna be watching for that moment. And unfortunately, most of the situations in which somebody would mention a morgue is not the right time to say that. So it's going to be a very diligent process waiting for a moment to say this.
Your time will come, Andrew. I have faith. Great scene, a lot of fun. And this is, I think, I was saying where I think I don't think Halloween specific. Like, this seems like it should be a creepy, weird, eerie, gothic thing, and it is in a lot of ways, but overtly, the comedy is always at the top. It's always the situational comedy and hijinks that's going on in this man's reaction to the absurdist nature of what's happening. I love how the doctor is checking her out. Bruce Willis is in the background, stressed. He pulls out a flask, and the doctor never really, like, screams, but he's obviously very shaken, and he's very casually asked Bruce Willis, "Can I have a drink of that?" "Yeah, thanks." Takes the flask, takes a sip, and then just continues on with his trying to explain what's going on. I love the tone of this scene.
That drink is likely what killed him. Because he takes that medicine, he puts it in the side of his cheek, is usually for like heart pain, but he's mixed it with alcohol. So between that and the shock of this lady is dead and talking to you, it's probably what killed him. So kids, don't drink.
Ever.
If you take anything away from this movie,
zombies are hot and don't drink.
Yeah. Dear friend of the show, what is the best scene in Death Becomes Her?
So as a child, I would tell you the opening credits, right? A song and dance. It's going to get me every time. Still strong, but I would have to go for it. It's almost a cheat because it's kind of two scenes, but from the moment that Helen is faking her, "Madeline, I need to speak to Madeline at once," to we go from there, and then we're talking to Liesel and Madeline about the potion, and it goes right into how Helen wants to kill Madeline. It's kind of all one seamless go. Exquisite. So like the middle half of the movie, that's my favorite part.
It's the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault you. I blending the scenes together a little bit, but I think we'll allow it. I love this version of Helen because it doesn't last too long. We've got like the sheepish Helen in the beginning, and then she goes nuts, and then this part where she comes back. She's got this book deal, and she is manipulating the two of them and enacting her plan of revenge is my favorite version of the character. Because after that, we find out she has the potion, she's also a zombie, and it kind of just evolves to all this other stuff. But when she is like the mastermind of this revenge plot, and they do like the almost like heist movie style of walking Bruce Willis through the steps that it's going to be to kill her, make it like an accident. A lot of fun.
She's not necessarily a zombie yet. She hasn't died. She just took the potion.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just throughout the movie, the character goes through these different phases. I like this phase, this evil mastermind phase.
So wait, I have a question. So are they dead the whole time, or are they only dead after they die, and then the body just keeps going?
They're only dead after they die and the body keeps going, because the French guy in the spa definitely had an accident where it was like his eyes all jacked up.
Was messing up.
But he's probably not dead. He's just injured.
They seem to be... look, #PP, we love this movie and all, but like, there's a very large club of people that have taken this potion. They've been at it for decades. You know, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis... No one else has died. No one else has experienced this. No one else is going through what these two women are going through. You think there would be a system worked out by now for what happens whenever your body dies.
Well, it sounds like if you take care of the body, you don't have these problems. It sounds like it's the breaking of the neck and the breaking of the bones and the shotgun through the stomach and the
and you don't think any of those other people have had that happen to them?
I mean, they listened to the warning.
They listened to the instructions. And they're all rich, posh, not insane people. Well, they're probably insane, but the vibe I just got was that everybody else just followed the rules. Like, there was one rule: take care of your body. Like, you're gonna live forever now. Basically, just enjoy it. And really,
both of them were murdered.
Yes, also. But I actually, going back to that earlier thing you said about Liesel's character, I wouldn't be shocked if she's way older than 71. Like, she just says 71 because that says, like, it doesn't sound insane to the person that she's trying to sell on this, like, miracle potion. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all if she's been around for hundreds of years, just doing what she needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that checks out.
The only thing that bothers me about this scene, the only thing that bothers me about this scene is she comes.
You got to say hashtag PP if you're gonna complain.
Hashtag PP.
Thank you.
The only thing that bothers me is so she shows up, and I need to speak to Madeline at once. She's not here. Oh, thank God. And then she goes into her spiel, like she says sex a lot of times. They do whatever they're going to do. And then she goes into her spiel about the Narcanol, which wouldn't actually work. Not that I've looked it up. But so she has this whole plan, and she's laying it out for him. But like, what was her plan if Madeline was there?
We don't get to see that.
I know.
I don't know.
So did she come up with this off the cuff? Was she going to kill her herself? Like, we'll never know, but I do wonder. And, we're talking about it being, could it be a Halloween movie or spooky? Apparently it was supposed to be an episode of Tales from the Crypt. That is how this started.
That's where the story started for it. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And
add a comedic tone in the special effects and blow it out.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it when we were watching it. I mean, you could easily have this directed by Tim Burton, and it is a Halloween movie.
Yeah, I think he would certainly lean more into the
it is a Halloween
spooky,
movie.
gory
Like, why wouldn't
vibes.
it be?
I'm not against. If anybody out there watches this around Halloween, you have my blessing. Don't get me wrong, but
No
I
one
feel
asked
like
you, man.
I mean, Adam's Family Values is a Thanksgiving
my
movie.
stance.
And a summer camp movie.
Exactly. So this can
And
be
a
a
wedding
Halloween movie.
Because for some reason they do a Thanksgiving play at summer camp.
It's his vision.
It's Peter McNichol's The Goat of Ghostbusters 2 vision. Don't take it away from it. Like, I mean, there's just I talked about that though, but like there's so much, like there's all this gothic imagery. Like when she drives up to houses, there are these gothic castles and like storming nights.
Those
and, like,
nuns that like float down the
inside,
hall in the
like,
hospital.
There's the nuns, and like there's moments where like somebody looks and lightning strikes and illuminates their face. There's a whole Frankenstein vibe at like multiple points within this film. Like I would definitely see somebody being like, this is the spooky vibe for Halloween. Like I don't know why. It's called Death Becomes Her. Like
well,
I don't know how much more overt the movie can be.
Did you notice how often they play with mirrors in this movie? It's like every scene. I never noticed it, probably because I was a child when I watched this, but as a, full grown adult.
Turns out.
Yeah, it starts with her looking into a mirror that's not actually there, and then like every scene somebody is talking into a mirror, and or sometimes you're just looking at a mirror and you pan out, you had no idea you were looking into a mirror. So
yeah, those are my favorite shots. Those are really cool. They definitely work it in every chance that they get. I'm gonna say it's because this whole thing's a satire on Hollywood's vain image, and everyone's obsessed with their own image and what they look like, looking youthful, and their vanity. A lot of fun, and it just makes for an interesting. Movies are a visual medium, make it interesting.
Yeah, so even in the 90s, we've come so far since then with that.
Well, it turns out this director has a slight idea of what he's doing too. It turns out so.
It's funny because I was thinking how, we talked about Robert Zemeckis in the beginning of the episode, but there's definitely like a divide in his career. And at first in my head, like, oh, this is before he became obsessed with like his technology. And it's like, well, no, really? He's always been obsessed with technology. I mean, Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, these are all like technical marvels, this movie too. But I guess what I mean is a very specific technology that becomes obsessed with his digital people, whatever you want to call it, Polar Express and on. It's
Motion
like a whole
capture.
Other half to his career.
Yeah,
but
it's like Polar Express, Beowulf, Christmas Carol, which is weird because he does 3 movies like that, and that's it. They are back to back to back, and I'm sure.
Well, Welcome to Marwen isn't exactly like that, but it's still playing in that ballpark.
It is, and like But something like Flight, and then I mean, obviously you got Pinocchio, which definitely yeah. So it is interesting though that like he's got this, yeah, like it. I couldn't.
What if Flight was a motion capture movie? What if just for some reason that was all?
What human plays the plane? Denzel actually played the plane. That's the thing. Like Denzel is the plane.
Denzel upside down,
flying through the air. But no, it is wild because like I know he made The Witches a couple years ago, but like I couldn't imagine Zemeckis making Death Becomes Her today, and that's kind of a shame. I feel like this is the type of movie he should be making today. Do more of this, man.
I think it would arguably look not as good, and we can get off Zemeckis. Not even if Zemeckis made it. Anybody, I'm not sure it would look this good. This is such an interesting mid-90s, late 90s. There's some like dodgy CG that does not age well. We talked about Spawn on our podcast. That's 5-6 years after this. Does not hold up, the CG. This does. And this is a year after Terminator 2, which also totally holds up. I mean, whenever she breaks her neck from falling on the stairs, whenever she stands up, you can tell it's CG. You can tell it's a special effect. But it looks good. And I don't know enough about the technology to kind of tell you exactly why this ages well. Some stuff a few years later doesn't. But there's this early 90s little bubble here where they... I don't know, man. Maybe. They took their time and did it right. But I think it's just...
that. Adequate money and time spent on special effects.
I think it's also that the TG is so primitive that they get as much in camera as they can. And they do 6 passes of a scene to have all the plates that they need. And just do just enough CG to make it work. Whereas... Now jump to, I don't know, Daredevil, and you just replace the entire actors with CG, and none of the physics is right,
I like how Daredevil was your go-to for that, not Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's more beloved by everybody, but I think Spider-Man 1 ages just as poorly as Daredevil, but I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
No, but it does look pretty, like when you look at it, you can tell it's older, but it's from 92, it's pretty old. Not that we're old at all. But I mean,
don't throw
just
that on us now.
I know. Sorry, take that part out. It made me sad. Now I need the potion. But when you're looking at Helen's stomach when she's got the big hole through her, like you can see right through her down to when she's like holding the shovel in front of her. Like she moves the shovel down, you see the shovel go through her stomach. Like it's crazy. Even when she sits down on the couch. And the digital artists had to re-render how that looked because she didn't sit how they thought they were going to. But like you can't tell. It looks like she's just sitting through that shovel.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, by the way, I don't know if I ever got around to saying it, but it's going to be Helen getting killed. Because I like to imagine, this is probably impossible, probably never happened, but like if you watch this movie totally blind, having no idea what's going on, the reveal that Helen has also taken the potion, because it hasn't been said at this point, where she stands up in the pool, has got to be the coolest moment. Like, you might suspect it. You might think they didn't actually kill Goldie Hawn halfway through. Maybe. But that reveal where she stands up and you see the hole through her, fantastic. It's like, I just mentioned Terminator 2. Like, there's unfortunately probably no audience member that ever sat through the beginning of that movie not knowing Arnold was the good guy this time around, but they still play it as if you don't know. That scene in the hallway where the T-800 and the T-1000 are both approaching John Connor, you don't know which way it's going to go. No one actually gets to experience that the way that would be the most impactful. It's probably the same way here. Like, I think, aside from that poster we discussed earlier, that's just cleavage. Most covers of this movie, the one I remember growing up, is revealing on the cover that they are both dead. They are both zombies or whatever you want to call it. So like you knew this was coming, but it's such a fun reveal, 1. And 2, that shotgun blast, very Quentin Tarantino, very exploitation, very the way she flies 30 feet through the air into the pool. And then she ejects the shell from the shotgun, and the way it flies 3 feet behind her, it's beautiful. I love that so much.
Cinema.
There is a great episode of Corridor Crew that breaks down this movie and this special effect specifically, and the amount of work that goes into it to have the combination of practical and CG, and I love the detail where she stands up, she's got the hole in her stomach, and water is just pouring out of her. Like, she has to, like, empty out because all this water's gone into her. She's been floating in that pool. Wonderful little touch. And then throughout the rest of the movie, or at least a good chunk of it after this, you see her shadow or silhouette a lot, and her shadow always has the hole in the stomach. And it's like, I bet a lot of work went into that, but it's so worth it to have that little detail.
It makes all the difference, I think. I think it's the little details that make it work, and I think that's part of why it ages well, because it'd be easy to not do the legwork, and that's something that Zemeckis, even now with the stuff that's even less well received, people will say the attention to detail is there. Like something like Here just came out, and the reviews were #PP pretty horrid as far as like missing the mark narratively, but the effect of what he's doing and that idea, there's whole movies that Zemeckis makes that are just about, he is fascinated with this concept or this idea, and when he goes hard on it. Like, you talk about the motion capture with Polar Express or Beowulf or Christmas Carol. You talk about something like Welcome to Marwen, where he's playing with that, like that toy aesthetic that he tries to go with. With this, he throws himself into this concept, and he makes sure that every single piece of it is meticulously crafted. And I think that's a part of it that just makes it stand out. And like you said, Chris, earlier, with this being an early usage of CG, like you said, they're still trying to capture as much as they physically can in the frame, in the camera. So it means that you're only doing CG where you absolutely have to. And I think all of that combines that. So even if you can be like, oh, that's CG, and maybe by modern aesthetics, it's pretty rough, it somehow doesn't feel dated because of the effort that went into it.
I do like that much of that scene, the actual fight is just their shadows. So I bet that was part of it. Like,
Yeah.
Man, this is hard to get done. Let's just do their shadows. We'll just show them fighting this way and not have to actually animate
Work smarter, not
her
harder.
stomach the whole time.
Yeah, you get like your money shot of showing the stomach. And once you've established that's the case, you can find cheap workarounds to continue to remind the audience that it's there. And, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Limitations breed creativity. Like, because they can't just have every shot be a super extensive special effect, they have to do these silhouettes. And these are just more creative, visually interesting ways to continue to remind you that their bodies are falling apart, or Meryl's neck gets broken, and it's not like she pops it back on her shoulders and then she's good. It continues to fall off her shoulders. It falls backwards, falls forward, gets stretched up too high, gets pushed down into her chest like she's a Ninja Turtle, and then finally you just see that she gets like those the what do you call that necklace thing she's wearing?
Choker.
She gets a hard necklace to choker, to keep her head up, and then we can move on from there. But so good. I also love that. Again, I really love the scene where Helen is walking through the plan, and then at first Ernest kind of freaks out. He's like, I can't do that, and like the camera pans and makes it a point to show this gun rack in the house. And I made a note, like, this is literally Chekhov's gun. Like, they are showing us a gun, and we know from then it's going to be fired. And the payoff, again, happens in my favorite scene. It's so good.
And he murders someone first. In fact, Helen's the only one that doesn't kill anybody.
Yeah, I guess there's no one left to kill at that point, unless she killed
I mean, she
Ernest,
definitely inflicts enough damage to have killed somebody. She's just already dead.
Well, also, Helen's the one that sets everything into motion that leads to her dying. I mean, if she had intervened, then Meryl wouldn't have died. But
she didn't do it. She didn't kill nobody.
None of them are good people, except for Ernest. After the events of the movie, right? He becomes, based on the sermon we hear at his eulogy at the end, that he gained an appreciation for life after the events of this, and goes on to this long, fulfilling life and having these kids and living these adventures. But it takes going through all this to get to that.
He's still a merdiddly erdler.
He becomes a good person.
Did you hear the way she was talking to him? No.
He pushed her down the stairs.
I mean, I think
put his finger on her chest to give her something to grab onto to hold herself up. It's not his fault that she did not reach out and take it. This is just like when Marty Jannetty threw himself through that window to escape from Shawn Michaels. This is absolutely ridiculous. I will not stand for this slander.
Cowardice. It's not. There's this profound statement that death gives meaning to our life that this movie, you can take from this movie. It doesn't beat you over the head with it. It doesn't get too sentimental about it, but it's there to read if you want to read into it. Andrew, you love that line from Ernest about she's going to be the morgue. She's going to be furious. I think my favorite delivery from him is whenever Helen again comes back and she's seducing him and saying things that are sexual, and she says, "You're a very sexual being, Ernest," and he says, "I am." Love this super attractive woman coming on to him, and he's like, "Are you sure?" Me?
It's not my understanding.
I love the line delivery also from Meryl Streep whenever she's being offered the potion and she finally takes it, and then she's told, "Now a warning." She says, "Now a warning."
Ow.
After she adjusts it. Very good line delivery there.
I love they're sitting in the car going to Helen's book release, and Madeline is just like, "Could you just not breathe?"
I felt that.
Yeah. It's such a good this movie has some great I mean, it moves so fast in the beginning, but it's so efficient. It doesn't feel rushed. But Ernest is with Helen, and he's like, "Oh no, it's purely professional. I love you." Jump cut, he's getting married to Meryl Streep. Like, it tells you everything you need to know in one shot. And then there's another jump cut, and they're miserable, and she's mad at him for breathing, and they hate each other, and he refers to her as it with the housekeeper that they have. Rose, thank you. Very efficient storytelling. In fact, one criticism I see in like the reviews of the time are like, yeah, special effects are great, but there's story. There's like nothing here. He's too tied up in the special effects, which like I see efficient storytelling. I don't think this movie's improved much by adding more. Like I'm really amazed that this movie doesn't open with the two girls like as teenagers in high school. We never see the version of them where they're actually friends. They sort of secretly hate each other from the beginning of this movie. We don't get shown the whole backstory. We get filled in a little bit later, but it jumps right to the quote unquote frenemy stage. Whereas most movies would establish they're friends, there's a falling out, and it falls, apart to where it is at the beginning of this movie. Through dialogue later, we kind of hear that they used to actually be friends, but we're not really shown it in the beginning. The movie just moves at such a clip, and it's fun. I think it moves like an hour 45. It has like the pace of like a 90-minute movie. Just fast, fun, get in, get out. Don't overstay your welcome. And I don't think more story necessarily improves this movie.
I don't think so either. And it just strikes me as the same kind of people that will be like, Mad Max Fury Road is just one long car chase. And it's like, yeah. Okay.
And it's very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, the idea that the plot's not complicated enough, therefore it can't be good, is just, I don't think it's like you're telling on yourself. It's like if the plot's not complicated, it's not art or whatever. I don't know. Like, this is very straightforward. Such as a movie like this can be. Like, just because the story is extremely straightforward does not mean that it's not done well, and it's not good. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to have a simple story, don't get me wrong, you should then execute it extremely well, or multiple executions, if you will. But it's the idea, but the idea that that it's like, it's all effects, no story. Which, to be fair to, I guess, early Zemeckis haters, is the line that pretty much dogs him the entire rest of his career post Forrest Gump. But I don't know. That's just that's always been such a weird criticism to me. Like, basically, this story's not complicated enough for me, and it's like, that's your problem, man, not mine.
Isn't it interesting that there's nothing in the definition of the word flaccid that means penis, but that's the only time you ever hear that word?
It is interesting.
Something to think about.
I would prefer not to.
Also,
I just love the way she says it.
I love the joke that the manservants are Tom, Dick, and Harry. But also, it's always that order: Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tom, Dick, and Harry. Why is it never like, I don't know, Tom, Harry, Dick?
Do you not know the saying?
Okay.
They also all look like they could be members of Steel Dragon from Rockstar.
Fabio's in here somewhere. I saw on Wikipedia. Where's Fabio?
He's
Does he put
one
the
of
jacket
Liesl's
on her?
bodyguards. Yeah.
So he's Tom, Dick, or Harry?
No,
No, he's
not
different.
Tom
In that
Dick or
crew?
Harry. He's different.
Okay. Not one of the main three, but he's some other Tom, Dick, or Harry there.
He wears a shirt, I believe. I think he's wearing a white shirt.
Which just defeats the purpose, really. Because like Tom, Dick, or Harry all look like they're trying out to be Fabio's
American
stunt
Gladiator?
double.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, dear friend of the show, my wife, thank you so much for bringing us this gift to finish out the year. This was such a blast to actually rewatch this movie after not having seen it in so long, and to have you on the show with me. It's weird that took so long to happen, but thank you for being here.
It is. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I guess you guys can keep doing your podcast for a few, more years. I suppose we can keep making this happen. And maybe next time I'm on, I will bring you another favorite movie of mine, Employee of the Month. So
no.
Be prepared for, be prepared for that one.
This was the last time she was on our show.
Oh, then
Now,
suddenly I don't think we can schedule these anymore.
Here. You are saying Employee of the Month starring Dane Cook and Jessica Simpson.
How dare you? I am absolutely talking about that movie. That is my comfort movie.
This is an 89 Honda. How
that's
dare
the one
you?
line of that movie that I laugh at. The rest of it, I'm like, oh no. And that's because Dax Shepard is actually funny. Unlike Dane Cook, has somehow made 6 movies where he played the guy who got laid accidentally. Yeah, right. No.
I agree. We could do the whole podcast without talking about him, but I'm just saying if we
there
can't
we go.
make time
Mark
for
Strong
that,
Award, Dax Shepard, best scene, 89 Honda. How dare you?
does that count?
There's the episode. Done.
We are podcasting with positivity.
And that's it, Andrew. That's it. That's a wrap. That's the end of guest month, end of another year of Best of the Rest. And well, Andrew, we got to do some housekeeping. We got to do some a big announcement here. First off, this month was a ton of fun. I love this concept. I mean, a little behind the scenes here. Like, we kind of knew, like, we can't just do Christmas holiday movies every December because there's only so many of them. We're going to hit the bottom of the barrel at some point. So I really liked this concept of inviting guests, letting them choose anything. I think it's a fun way to end the year. And sort of the plan was we can record these episodes with guests at any time, record them ahead of time, and give us a little break at the end of the year. Well, Andrew, we knocked a few of these out ahead of time. We were ahead of schedule, but man, this was a lot of work, a lot of moving parts to get these recorded. Gosh, I don't know. If you're paying attention to our release schedule, you can probably see how much it was. It's just end of the year is busy, man. Holidays and family.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, when you look at the biggest stuff that's really a stressor, I mean, when you look at the month of November, you've obviously got Veterans Day. That's a tough one. A lot going on there. When you get into December, I mean, you have Boxing Day, which is that's a tough one too. And
holidays near and dear to our hearts.
It's the tough ones. Those are the ones that really come to mind when I think about the stuff that just really makes things more busy, and it's tough to balance it.
My birthday's in there somewhere. That's a big one.
Yeah,
there's a lot of moving parts. For me personally, I had a change in jobs, change in schedule. Like there's just a lot, and what I could feel happening, Andrew. I'm not going to use the word burnout, but certainly a stress around making this podcast, which is not good because I kind of obsess over the quality of our show. I want it to be as good as possible. I want things to release in a timely manner. I want to make sure we're bringing the right energy to this podcast. And this podcast is a source of stress that's going to come out in the audio. That's going to, I don't want to start slipping on our quality. Whenever this is no longer fun is whenever we need to no longer make this show. But that's not what's happening. Nip that in the bud. That's not where I'm going with this. But what we are going to do, Andrew, is we're going to take a little break from releasing episodes. We got to take a breath. We got to catch back up. Got to get back to routine, back on track, and make sure this thing stays fun. This is not the end of Best of the Rest by any means. Got a lot of fun stuff coming up. We are right around the corner from episode 200, which is wild that we're going to have officially 200 of these things out there very soon. But we are not going to release episodes in the month of January. We're taking January 2025 off. Our plan is to resume the first week of February with a little more refreshed, a little back on schedule, more consistent release times, and just right the ship a little bit. That's all that's going on here. So if you haven't already, join our Discord. We'll keep you updated on any changes or anything like that, or movies that are, our schedule that's coming up, what movies we'll be covering, what the theme is. But that's basically it. We gotta take a little breather, and I think it's best. It's me the best thing for everybody.
I agree.
But thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with us for how long did we say we've been doing this? 28 years. All 28 years of this podcast.
67 years.
This month.
If I could speak for a moment, Chris.
Yeah, I'll allow it, Andrew. Go ahead.
I know. I know that you put a lot of work into this. I know that Chris really is the brains of this operation. All I do is bring this stupid voice. And it's
you're barely even doing that right now, Andrew. You're barely even
right
bringing
now,
the voice.
Is out. The voice is giving away. Just as a metaphor for this entire year, and it barely made it to the end. But I know you put a ton of work into this podcast. I know that there's a lot going on in your life with the job changes, with everything that's going on, and I just want you to make sure that you again understand that the work that you do is not just appreciated by me, but obviously by all of our fans, but it is especially appreciated by me, because the fact that you do it means that I don't have to. And it's it's I know it's not easy. I spent years doing a podcast where I did have to do this, and I know how difficult it is. I know the work that goes into it. So I want you to know that I've always appreciated everything that you've done. And like when you broached me about this, you thought it felt like you kind of thought I was going to have a problem with it. Like, we can't do that. And I'm like, no, we could do more than a month. We settled on a month, but if you need the break, you've earned it 100 times full. So I appreciate what you've done. I look forward to taking a little bit of a break and coming back refocused, re-energized. And I think everybody here is going to understand.
Take a break, Andrew. Drink some hot tea. Do what you got to do. No, thanks. I mean, yeah. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, sure. It's a lot of work, but I love it. I love doing this podcast. I love that we make it. But as I said earlier, it's got to remain fun. We got to be doing it for the right reasons, and that's all that's happening here. I want to let you all know that. But again, thanks for everybody listening. We'll be back stronger, better, faster than ever. Probably not faster. It'll probably be like 2-hour episodes, but
definitely not faster.
We'll be back, and until then, until the new year, until the return of regularly scheduled Best of the Rest episodes, just remember, maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song, and special thanks to Brittany Rochelle for singing our holiday theme song. Thanks to Mitch for the music. You can check him out on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy and check our show notes for his SoundCloud link. Check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.